Hey, Alpha fam, welcome back to another episode of Alpha Commission. Today on Alpha Commission, we're just going to have another trading Cardano session. Of course, Cardano has been a pretty slow mover compared to the rest of the market, and some people may be fairly frustrated with it. But I'd like to put forward the idea that actually Cardano, contrary to the dialogue out there, is actually being the mature guy in the room, right, so to speak. This Cardano is waiting for the signals that Bitcoin gives in order to make its moves. It's not being all gung ho, reckless in its teenage years, like Ethereum and some of these other coins like Matic, which just are just being extremely high risk and extremely volatile. Cardano is just sitting back, sipping some tea, watching what Bitcoin does, and then relatively just following along, right? And so, what did we see on Bitcoin this morning? We actually saw Bitcoin, right, basically complete the pattern of this kind of accumulation wedge that I was suggesting that Bitcoin could be putting in on the charts. And basically, this would set Bitcoin up for a possible pop to the upside, depending on whether or not volatility broke down or broke up at 33,300, and then for the downside, basically 23,300, and then 23,000 to the downside. If Bitcoin had put in 4-hour candles underneath 23,000, probably Cardano and the rest of the market would have been tanking right now, and Cardano would be tanking the least because everything else has just gone crazy, irrationally reckless, compared to Bitcoin, whereas Cardano has just basically been following the same pattern. It didn't really want to believe in this area in the beginning. It did catch up, and now that Bitcoin is showing real bullishness, Cardano is also showing that bullishness, right? And so you do see just kind of, a more kind of compressed version of Bitcoin in this chart. You do see these diagonals, which, a Cardano did have to, break out of before it was able to move forward. It has a much more complex area than Bitcoin and some of these other coins in its diagonals. And so those are real resistances that bots and algorithms deal with, not necessarily your everyday trader. They don't all consider every diagonal, but the bots and the algorithms absolutely do. And so as Cardano fought these diagonals, it just took a little bit more time, just to figure out what's it going to do. We did establish, these buy-ins and these sell zones as relatively, good values or potential places to buy in at the bottom, considering the formations that other more bullish coins were putting in, especially as Ethereum was leading the way. We could have a little extra confidence in buying ADA Cardano at the bottom here, because we didn't just think it was going to drop to hell while Ethereum was shooting to heaven. That wouldn't make sense, guys. It wouldn't make sense. And so there are appropriate moments in the market to take a risk, right? Like, not all risk are equally as risky. And this area right here was super safe to buy in, as we were putting in, especially a higher low right here. And as we started to have these kind of Wyckofian kind of accumulation patterns being put on many, many coins, several of which were just popping off early on, like Matic, etc. And of course, that suggested that even if Cardano took its time, that would just give us the breathing space to be very strategic about our entries. And so the last buy-in spot that I recommended to you guys, which, by the way, this is not financial advice. I'm basically basically just talking to myself in a room here, trying to become a better trader myself. And if I present this kind of dialogue, it is just for entertainment. You understand why I need to say these things. I'm not trying to take responsibility for your trades or your financial health. That's up to you. But just in reflecting upon the charts, I should say, I recommended buying in at this area, and so that could carry us to the top of this resistance zone that we've already established here. And sure enough, when Bitcoin popped off in a positive volatility, so did Cardano. And what would that suggest? Well, that would suggest as Bitcoin, potentially breaks its own little kind of accumulation wedge here, that Cardano is going to have a chance to do the same thing. And, it's pretty simple, guys. It's pretty simple. I have it all marked out for you. This is the resistance that I suggested to take some profit at. I did not move this, so you guys can check it from the last episode. And so we just popped right up to there, and you guys can, take some profit if you'd like, or don't. I'm not the boss of you. And so, this thing might have another pullback. It might face some resistance. It might consolidate along this edge. And if the market stays bullish, I would expect it to break upward and potentially get that, maybe a 10 to even 20% move out of this. Now, because this was our buy-in zone down here, the move is actually greater for the alpha fam. So if you guys are just watching this for the first time, you guys understand that the move for us is actually 25 to maybe even 35%. But if you're just watching this episode here, I don't recommend buying in the top 1/3 of charts, to be honest. Maybe top 1/4 of charts. This is okay if you're having higher lows and you want to take a risk, especially as you have a breakout from a diagonal. That's usually a good sign that we basically did a retest of this diagonal here, which similar to Cadena was a very critical diagonal to break out from. And so the fact that we captured it, is bullish. It is a very bullish signal. And, having retested that and then breaking to the upside, again, it just suggests to me that maybe something similar to what happened with Cadena can happen with ADA, and that we shouldn't be over bearish on this asset just because it's a slow mover, right? It's just testing the waters. It's just going at a little bit more of a mature pace, right? There might be an older consumer who is maybe purchasing this with maybe a little bit less risk tolerance than some of those guys who maybe are buying the metaverse coins and those type of things, right? And so the type of buyer who is investing in Cardano as a high cap, right? And as kind of a long-term vision, they may just be a little bit more of a slow dancer, a little bit more of a slow mover, a bit more conservative than the rest of the market. But that doesn't mean that the formation is invalid. The only question is, do we miss the window to pump if stocks have a major retrace? We go over to the stock market, and we can see that we're getting very toppy on these trends on the stock market. And right here on the upper line, I actually have the log chart limitation, which would suggest maybe a little bit more could be squeezed out if traders are using the log chart. If they're using the linear chart, we basically have already maxed out our trend line, which would suggest that there's really only a little bit more that the market can probably squeeze out to the upside on stocks before there's a major pullback. And so if Cardano wants to make its move, it really should act this week, okay? Like guys, we have a little bit of a time limit, set against us, and I suspect that people investing in ADA, may also be investing in the stock market. And so if you guys are paying attention to how the stock market is getting toppy, then you'll also understand that this push needs to come soon. So it would be a wise idea to take some profits and then maybe have some type of strategy for the breakout, right, in this area. Of course, we could see a little bit of consolidation here. We could see a little bit of a little bit of a breakdown. And if we do come back to this area, again, it might just be a differential that you want to take advantage of in a small degree. But on ADA, that's a very small percentage. And I think the more key point is that if we lose this trend, then perhaps we're coming back to our mid channel here. And that, that wouldn't be great, right? That wouldn't be a great look for Cardano. We want to keep this mid channel, and especially we don't want to lose that critical 50 cents that I've been talking about so many times for basically the last month and a half. I've been talking about 50 cents. Holding it critically is extremely important. And when we did that, I mentioned, yeah, guys, like that's the moment for Cardano. Like that's the moment that I want to get in Cardano when we secured that zone. And that's why we got this. We got this 10% pop, which isn't anything to sneeze at. 10% in a trade is a great trade. So good job, Cardano family. ADA is acting a little bit slow, but in some sense, it's just being a little bit more mature than the rest of the market. So that's basically your update for Cardano today. I don't want to take too much time. Just understand that we do have a stretch goal in this area, and as you are seeing other coins popping off in this direction, there is a high likelihood that Cardano is going to want to try to make that push as well. Now, maybe because of just how slow moving this thing is, just how conservative this asset is, maybe it kind of bumps its head into this little bit of a rough spot, this kind of little bit of a you know let's call it just a little mid channel over here, where the wicks kind of bounce around a bit. But overall, I would still expect that it would make an effort. It would make an effort to try to push into this stretch goal area. But again, just to be a little bit more mature, a little bit more responsible, let's just set the limit here, maybe around 60 cents. If we do get a pop, maybe find a little bit of resistance there, maybe even do a check back and then try again, if assuming the market stays bullish. Guys, that's your update for Cardano, and that's your alpha for the day. Stay safe and happy trading.